right, we are back. Welcome back, everybody, to the ASO Conference 2020 for this second section. Next up, we have our second panel discussion, which is going to be moderated by David from AppsFlyer, one of our sponsors for today. In the call, we also have Maryia from Apalon, Quoc from Omio, Thomas Petit, who is a mobile growth expert. Everybody knows him. Welcome to the call. Are you guys there? Can you hear me? And can you talk?
I can hear you. I can talk. Nice to be here, guys.
Hey, welcome, David. All right, I'm going to jump off and leave it to you.
Fantastic. Thanks very much. Great to be here, folks. So today we're going to be talking about the synergies between ASO and Apple search ads with some fantastic mobile marketers. And a quick bit of housekeeping, give you a bit of an overview because Otas has said I've got to keep to 30 minutes. And I'm sure we could talk about this all day. So we're going to keep to time. We're going to do about 20 minutes with the panel. I'll introduce them all in a second. And then we're going to leave a good 10 minutes at the end to do Q&A because we really want to hear from you guys. So if you've got any questions as we go through or even now, jump into the hashtag ASO-conference channel, and please send lots of questions for the panel, and we'll make sure we get to as many of them as we can at the end. But first, let's introduce everyone. So on the line we've got Maryia Filimanchuk from Apalon, lead marketing manager there, based in Minsk, a city very close to my heart, as we did a wonderful event in Minsk last year. Maryia, tell us a bit about Apalon quickly. Tell us about the business. It's super interesting. It's a super big portfolio. Tell us a bit about that and a bit of your background.
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone. Hi David. So my name is Maryia. I've been working with mobile apps for almost 8 years, and if you don't know what Apalon is, it's a company who's been there from the very first version of the App Store, and our business evolved a lot during these years. At a certain point, we were acquired by the IAC, and now we're part of this mobile division called Mosaic. And we have some cool apps at Apalon and some of our sister brands like iTranslate, RoboKiller, Delibron, and a few more. And this division just surpassed 1 billion installs, so it's huge, and it's not it's separated from Match.com, who has this Tinder, OkCupid, and other like dating apps. So yeah, this is our business.
Fantastic, good stuff. I've genuinely never done Tinder at 40 years old, but I do feel like I've done a lot of matchmaking recently with all the online conferences and networking rooms that you get into. So kind of a bit of that. And Quoc from Omio, ground transportation specialist app. How's it going, Quoc? You're based in Berlin, right?
Right. Yeah, my name is Quoc. I've been doing mobile marketing for 4 years, and especially with a focus on ASO. And at Omio, we have, as you said, ground transport, so train and bus, but also flight. Yeah, I do the app store optimization for our Google iOS and Huawei app.
Nice, great stuff, and Huawei as well. It's interesting. So you're in that store as well already. Cool. And and last but not least, of course, Thomas, you must be getting so fed up of doing Zoom calls with me. We feel like we've done about 1 million recently, but it's always a pleasure. You all know Thomas. Thomas, give us a quick bit of background for those who may not have met you before.
Pleasure is mine, David. So as you noticed, there's no company attached to my name, which was a bit weird in the intro. I work for myself. I work with a bunch of different apps in the subscription space, mostly non-gaming, around paid UA, but also onboarding, monetization, data, and broader strategy. So I work with a bunch of different apps, and search ads is a little bit of of a side passion for me where I dig. So hopefully we can provide some good insights today between the four of us.
Sure we can. I'm sure we can. So we're gonna, like I said, let's get started on that note. And remember, fire any questions into the hashtag ASO-conference channel at any point, folks. So let's start off with one of the kind of obvious places where we all agreed there was a really great synergy and a really great area for marketers to dig when we spoke before, and look at how ASA learnings with regards to keywords can help inform ASO strategy, which is a little bit more black box. Thomas, tell us a little bit, maybe kick us off on that one and tell us a bit about how you've done that and how you've seen that working.
Yeah, and maybe even as an intro, it's sort of, in my opinion, like Apple search ads can inform ASO on two very different sides, on the keyword side and on the conversion side. So on the keyword side specifically, basically it sort of opens the black box. We have so little data about ASO that here we've got a little bit of harder data that we can use. And one of there are two big use cases for me. One is to monitor the volume. So see in terms of impression instead of estimation of volume, but also over time, especially in COVID, but on your brand or whatever. So one is really volume of search that informs your ASO strategy in terms of impression. The other one is about quality. And I think that's the very important one, because Apple doesn't provide post-install data on search. We don't really know which keyword performed better or worse. And one example I've shared in the past, but I'd like to repeat today, back then when I was working with a well-known fitness app, and we were battling to position for fitness and nutrition because those were the most searched keyword. But thanks to the opening of search ads, so that was a little while ago, as you see, we realized that the keyword workout had a much better monetization funnel than fitness, and same for meal planner instead of nutrition. And it really informed our ASO strategy to shift from focusing on fitness and nutrition to workout and meal planner. And without search ads, we wouldn't be able to have seen any of this, given that Google is not showing the search ads data anymore. So I thought that was a very interesting example to mention, to get like post-install data at keyword level, which we don't get on ASO.
And you say you use that to inform your keyword strategy and also to do that sort of post-cohort, that cohort analysis as well.
Yeah, well, it's the analysis of the cohort that informs ASO choices, basically. Like you look at the cohort detail and then you choose where you're going to battle more. I mean, the space in ASO is really limited, so you can't battle everywhere. And at some point you need to prioritize. And I think search ads data is a really good way of making this prioritization, thanks to the cohort.
Yeah, Quoc. So I mean, you've got a super competitive space in transportation, right? And how have you used ASA in that way to inform your ASO keyword strategy? Oh, I think you might be on mute. Easily done.
Yeah, since we are in multiple transport modes, we have created several groups, keyword groups, ad groups, to see which keywords perform best and which market is more competitive. And there we have learned that, of course, the flight industry is really, really competitive. And there we have to be careful how much we want to go in. But on the ground transport side, there is not as much competition. And therefore, we can focus on there more and try to push our brand there more than on the flight side, where there are tons of great competitors.
Yeah, great. And so you've got, if I'm hearing you right, you've got this kind of classic dynamic of using, going for lower competition, but lower competition keywords, but using the ASA as being the way to inform that strategy and focus that strategy. And Mary, again, also super competitive category that you're in with some of your portfolio apps, productivity apps, those kind of things. What are you seeing in-house? I think you built an in-house solution, is that right, to help you with that?
Yeah, but it's not just about our in-house solutions, how to track installs and attribute them, but I will say that Apple Search, it gives us this data, and I will encourage those who work with App Store optimization to check the conversions of certain keywords, so whether they are relevant and why certain keywords they like convert better or worse compared to another. And this data can help us to build some strong hypotheses on what to test next and what to do next, and understand the user's behavior, why they're converting better on the certain keywords and worse on the different ones.
Yeah, that's interesting. So when we think about testing hypotheses and using ASA to do that, I know that Thomas, you mentioned that actually it's actually ASA has lifted that black box. It's opened the black box, and actually a lot of your previous ASO hypotheses can now actually be not just tested, but you can maybe even see that data in in its full light.
That was a question? Yes, I
Yeah,
agree with what you said.
Yeah, in terms of how you maybe had, we were making a lot of guesswork
Yeah.
maybe is the word for ASO metadata previously and keywords previously, and now you can be a lot more focused with that.
Well, to be frank, there's still a lot of blurry and gray area even with search ads, but it's true that it opened it in many ways. And we get keyword level data, we can look at cohorts. It's at many levels. You can also inform new hypotheses, like Maryia said, for example, on screenshot. Like, it's not only about the cohort and post-install data, but also CTR is so important in ranking keywords organically. You can maybe try creative sets, see if you can raise CTR on search ads through new screenshot. And then if this keyword is really important for you and you notice a CTR uplift with particular screen, maybe deploy this. And before we would just have deployed it entirely, the measurement would be a lot more shaky. Like, basically it was harder to create hypotheses and it was harder to validate hypotheses. And I think it really opened it up in different ways, but it's still far from perfect. I mean, the paid data is still not organic data. There are lots of savvy users who never click on ads. Like, the behavior is, you only have this particular spot. So you also have to be careful that search is not the only information for ASO. It's not completely delivering what we would love to see in terms of data for organic and ASO, but it's certainly a great addition and something that you should use, combining the two of them. Yeah, definitely open up.
Yeah, there's a selection bias there. If you're only using the ASA data now, then you're obviously looking at users who have very potentially different behaviors. Interesting. And so let's talk then. So you mentioned that it's not or it's not all sort of totally open box now. We've still got some obstacles when it comes to reconciling data. And I know that's something that Quoc, that you guys have put some work into. Do you want to talk about some of the challenges you had when it comes to reconciling the data between ASO and ASA, and just how you in general kind of take the data from each of those two different separate disciplines and reconcile them to build a cohesive strategy?
Sure. Yeah, of course, the Apple App Store data isn't fully reliable for us, the organic one, and therefore we have an in-house data science team which tracks everything to differentiate between paid installs and organic installs and the other channels, of course. And yeah, they built a dashboard for us in Tableau, and so that we can analyze everything to see and differentiate between organic traffic and paid traffic, because as it has been said before, the App Store Connect data is not very consistent. They change their parameters sometimes, and then they change it back and then don't correct it retrospectively. And therefore we can't fully rely on them and have to build it on our own.
Yeah, and then you use that presumably to go on and then to make other decisions, and that's similar to what I think Mary was saying with their in-house solution that they've built with to enable better cohort analysis and work out what your LTVs are based on keyword level. Is that something you can talk a little bit more about, Mary?
Yeah, so with Apple Search Ads and certain magic from data team, we are able to track how particular keywords are working in terms of return on investment. And it's also like a very eye-opening for some of our team that certain keywords and certain users might be like less willing to convert, I would say. So it's also definitely worth to explore, and this is very valuable data. You will just run your search ads much more effectively if you have this data.
Yeah, great. And what do you tell your clients, Thomas, when they're talking to you about how to reconcile their ASO data in-house and maybe leverage it with ASO? What are the kind of reporting and analytical requirements you need to make that happen?
What I do, if it's written, I put big disclaimer at the bottom, like this is interpretation and not exact science. I think Nadir in the intro session made a great job at explaining how the metrics are defined very differently on search ads and ASO. Especially, it's hard to extrapolate impression between the two. So that's on the total. I think the keyword level data is extremely insightful. The total data is very complex to move because definitions differ, but also because Apple provides search combining paid and organic. So there's definitely learnings to be made there, but people who are, especially people who come from the paid UA side and are more used to hard data or data analysts, sometimes they fail to see how this data is still shaky. Like if you come from the ASO side, it looks like the world has brightened up a little bit, but it's still a bit of a dawn, really. Like it's not plain daylight. And you just have to be aware of it, that this kind of reconciliation, they can be very insightful, but you have to interpret it very cautiously and with a pinch of salt. So that's what I tell them. Be careful about making bold statement based on this.
So more transparency, but we're still not in a perfectly clear world here, and we've got to be very careful with the analysis of the data. And then let me ask you then one more question before we move to some questions from the audience then, guys. So all important question, because of course everyone's got budgets and we all need to kind of spend them wisely. How do you guys recommend adjusting ASA bidding based on what you're seeing in your ASO ranking? So is there something to think about there? If do you need to bolster one if you're ranking lower? If you're ranking really high, are you reducing your ASA bids? How do you guys approach that?
So, yeah.
After you, Quoc, fire away.
Okay. Yeah, so we don't let our high ranking for certain keywords bit lower for that keyword on ASA, because even if we rank #1, the Apple Search Ads is always at the top, and therefore it might take the install away from us. So even if we're #1, we try still bid on it, even on our own brand keyword. We bid just to make sure that we don't lose that install, even if the chance is very low on brand keywords. But we want to make sure that we get all the installs possible, and even if it means that it cannibalizes our organic installs.
Yeah,
I agree with that. I remember at some point I dig very far into that, and I tried to establish a strategy where I would stop bidding in search ads whenever I rank first. I work with the team at Mobile Action and searchads.com to automate this at some point. And honestly, I mean, that team did a great job. But for me, it was a lot of a rabbit hole. Like I was making a lot of micromanagement. And at some point I realized not only that this was a lot of work for nothing, that it looked great in theory, but that in practice, the effect was not so big. And a lot of example and tests we did actually informed me that I should bid regardless if I'm ranking well or bad. There is some cannibalization, but there will also be some uplift and incrementality. And if I can push my competitors below the fold, I'd rather have the paid placement and the organic placement than have a very complex strategy that is uncertain in its execution, but also that doesn't necessarily mean you're doing it better, establishing complex things like this. So I basically went back to being simple and sort of tried to do my best on ASO and on search ads. If the budget allows, I go all in because it's all good to take. I mean, this is not a positive sum game. Like this search is gonna end up somewhere, and I'd rather that it is in my app than in the competitor app.
Yeah. So it's feeling like that all important app placement, app of the day placement, like we used to have years ago. Just that number one spot is absolutely all important, and whether it's ASO or ASA, or whether you just have to be super aggressive and do both and pay the price. Interesting stuff. So let's ask some of the questions from the audience. So good question here. There's lots of good questions. Keep them coming, by the way, folks. I'm going to go first to one from Cameron Innes, and this is a question I asked you guys last week as well. Do you take learnings from ASA keyword post-install conversion data to inform keyword strategy on Google Play as well as the App Store? Maybe Maryia, if you want to take that one first.
I can try, but you feel free to add. I would say that two platforms are different, and user behavior are sometimes different. And while we have some data on the Google Play, on the word search terms also works for the app, I would be a bit skeptical of applying like a 100% results from Apple Store to the Google Play. They are not similar. You might take some hints, you might build some hypotheses, but there are like tools on the Google Play, a separate one to test that, I would say like that.
Yeah. What about you guys? You think this? You agree with that? Maryia said there, insight, but not necessarily 100% transferable.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I mean, you shouldn't apply it, but it's still interesting. I remember back in the days, I still had like 2-3 years of cohorts that I gathered from Google Ads on Android before UAC. So for a while, I used this past data because it was Android specific. But I'd be very cautious into porting any language from a store to another. Maybe a little bit more in terms of keywords than conversion, but still be very careful. So yes, I think Maryia explained it really, really good.
Great stuff.
It makes sense to take the data from Apple Search Ads as inspiration and then try out to test it in the Google Play console. But yeah, not 100%, of course, since there are different platforms.
Yeah, great stuff. And so a question from Caroline, and it's a popular question, that's for sure. I don't know if it falls into Thomas's spicy questions request or not. I think it's almost there. And so do we know for sure that the apps that invest more in ASA get favored by Apple's organic algorithms? Now, I guess it's a lot of people want to know about this. What's your thoughts on this here? Are the algorithms black boxes, or do we have some indications there?
Me, I'd call for bullshit. I've heard many agencies tell clients that if they spend more on search ads, they will get more organic and that their keyword will improve. I've run some tests where I went to 0 to lots of inventory and look at my organic rankings. And honestly, I couldn't see anything consistent for the long time. Maybe at the very beginning, there used to be an effect. What I believe is that it's not used for organic rankings, but because you target specifically this keyword, maybe you work on your screenshot to improve this, or maybe you just get more install overall, and then it benefits the organic. So I think the effect that might be there is indirect, and that Apple isn't like favoring apps that have big budget on ASA or spend on a particular keyword in organic. You might see it in some cases, but I think it's either indirect consequence or pure coincidence. I've seen it happen sometimes. I've seen it not happen other times. I don't think it's something that is solid, but obviously it goes in the way of agency who work both on ASO and ASA.
Good stuff. Interesting. And I don't know if you guys, Maryia, Quoc, have you seen any relationship between your investment, or you think it's they're agnostic in that respect?
Yeah. So my colleagues did a case study with Apple, and there it was proven to be true that it really helps if you use Apple Search Ads. For what reason? It wasn't very clear, but it shows, it helps in a way that you have more downloads on certain keywords, or if you start a new market, a new region, that you get a head start there if you invest in Apple Search Ads.
So an unintended consequence in that respect of just getting more volume, and therefore that improving your organic potentially. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think we've got time for one final question. So Hector has been waiting very patiently. So what are some of the common mistakes people make when they're building ASA ad groups? Can anyone speak to that?
For me, like the most basic mistake you should avoid, like the one that tells me the level of maturity, is I enter an account and I look if there's broad keyword or search match mixed with exact, because it really blurs everything there. So why is it a common mistake? Because it's not intuitive when you start on the platform. Like the search match option is activated by default, and that's something you want to pull off. Yeah, you only want to use broad and search match in discovery campaign. That would be like the biggest mistake. It's not necessarily the most common, because you discover very fast that this is a mess, but it's definitely the one you want to avoid at all costs.
Yeah. How about you guys? You got any painful learnings? Anything that you wouldn't do again? Anything you've done that you've burnt some budget on, or anything that you can recommend when it comes to ad groups and how you built those?
I can tell about another type of mistake I've seen quite a few times, and it's not really about ad groups, but since it's also, I think it's like an issue, and I have an advice, so I would like to talk about it. So I've seen some apps optimizing their name and title for certain keywords. And the thing that they describe their app on the landing page is a bit different from those keywords. So they're like optimizing and buying traffic for certain keywords, but what they like show users is a bit different. And in that case, they usually are like optimization is not working. We have very high bids. And they usually to blame like agencies or some like app store optimization teams, but it's not about the agency or any like marketer. It's about if you want to promote your app for certain keywords, it should be clear that your app like connected with these keywords, and it should be super clear for the user in a few seconds that it's the thing that he was looking for. And I've seen this a lot, and I would say that it's when you start optimizing and you start working with search ads or app store optimization, just it should be a synergy between your keywords and your landing page, and this is what I would say like a mistake.
I really, if I may, I really second Maryia on this, and I've seen another application of what she described, which is sometimes you try to bid high on an important keyword and you will not really getting served a lot, or you get low impression share, or it's expensive. And one of the things you might want to try is you promote the keyword from nowhere to maybe description keyword field, and even bring it to title or subtitle. But that's not the only way to work about keyword, because both in organic and in search ads, if people click and install is so important that you might want to work the visual side of it. And start thinking keyword, how can I represent this keyword visually? It's not about putting that keyword in the text of the screenshot, although that might work, but sometimes represent it through visual, like a drawing or something. And if you manage to lift up like CTR, TTR and conversion rate on this, it can really improve metrics from search ads and your investment, but also organic at the same time. So I think this is really great advice from Maryia. Think keyword, but also think broader than like keyword, and think about conversion and visuals when you think keywords. Great input,
Yeah,
Maryia.
and I was gonna second that as well, but you seconded it. So our third, manage user expectations all through the funnel, right? Whatever we're doing, whether it's ASO or anything, but App Store. Your App Store page is your shop window, so one of the most important places to do it. So we need to wrap. 1 minute over time. Just before we go, very, very big thanks to our panelists, to Thomas, to Maryia, and to Quoc, and also just a really huge thanks to Andy, to Moritz, and to Otas, and to all of the team at Feature as well for putting an ASO conference on virtually for what I believe is 1,200 plus people. An amazing number, great job. It's only their second year, and of course they've been hit by this horrible situation as we all have, but they've taken it online. They've given us the chance to keep talking, and we're really proud and grateful to be a sponsor here. So thanks to the guys at Feature, and thanks to our panelists, and I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, that was great, guys. It's what a panel. So many experts on that panel. Thomas was answering some spicy questions in person, and at the same time he was typing answers in the Slack channel. So not sure how he does that, but thanks again. That was